All right, today we're going to get into the psychology of those minds that just seem to operate on a totally different wavelength. We're going to explore why some of the toughest internal struggles you might face, well, they aren't flaws at all. In fact, they're the logical result of a very specific and pretty powerful kind of mental wiring. So let me ask you this. Does that question just hit you right where you live? It's this feeling a lot of us have, but, we can't quite find the words for it. Your mind can do these absolutely incredible things, but at the same time, it feels like the source of all your exhaustion and frustration. And from the outside, everything probably looks great. You're doing well, you seem capable, you look like you have it all together, but on the inside, there's this nagging feeling of being disconnected, like you're tuned into a different radio frequency than everyone around you. And chances are you've been given some labels throughout your life, right? You're too much, you're too sensitive, you think too much, you feel things too deeply. And after a while, those labels can really start to make you feel like something's just fundamentally wrong with you. But here's the thing. What if these aren't flaws? What if, as psychology suggests, they're the direct result of a brain that is literally wired for depth, for complexity, and for some serious processing power? Let's break down what that really means. Okay, first up, let's talk about what I like to call the overclocked brain. This is the whole idea that for some people, being highly intelligent doesn't make life easier. It just changes the kind of struggles you face. See, this kind of mind is basically built for nonstop processing. It almost never slows down. It gets bored with simple, repetitive stuff in a heartbeat. And it has this built-in need to question rules and authority. This can often show up as a deep struggle with perfectionism, and this is a big one. It can lead you to analyze your emotions instead of just letting yourself feel them. And what's wild is how all of this can lead to one huge misunderstanding. Have you ever been told you seem kind of distant or unemotional, especially when things get intense? People might look at your composure and think you just don't care. But psychologically, what's actually going on inside your head is a major sign of strength. It comes down to a concept called cognitive inhibition. It's your brain's amazing ability to hit the pause button on an automatic emotional impulse, giving you a second to choose a more deliberate response. So while someone else might just see a lack of an immediate reaction, what's really happening is this super high-level cognitive process. That pause isn't coldness. It's your brain's executive function firing on all cylinders. You're thinking before you react. So that's the overclocked brain. But, it's not just about raw intelligence. It's also about how our brains adapt. Our early life experiences, especially the tough ones, can hardwire some very specific traits right into our personalities. Think about it. For kids who had to take on way too much responsibility way too soon, the brain learns a very particular set of survival skills. You learn to depend only on yourself. Asking for help feels like a total weakness. And you become hyper-aware of what everyone else is feeling. Even something as simple as resting can feel dangerous because your nervous system learned that the calm often came right before the storm. There's a psychological term for this, and it's called parentification. It's what happens when a child basically has to become the adult in the room, managing things they just aren't equipped to handle. And to cope, the brain learns a really powerful but really costly lesson. Push your own needs down to manage the situation. Your feelings always come last. And that adaptation, it can stick with you for a lifetime. Okay, so we've got these two really powerful internal forces at play, a high-processing brain and an adapted brain. So now let's look at how these inner worlds create behaviors that, frankly, are often completely misunderstood by everyone else. And this really gets to a core difference in how we operate. So many people run on external validation. They need the likes, the approval, the social proof to feel good about themselves. But the kind of mind we're talking about, it operates on internal validation. Your confidence comes from your own personal standards and a solid sense of who you are, not from what the crowd thinks. And that explains so much, doesn't it? It's why you might not feel that burning need to document your entire life online or jump on every single new trend. It's not because you're antisocial or shy. It's because your sense of self just isn't dependent on being seen or approved of by other people. You don't need the jersey to know what team you're on. This also completely changes how motivation works for you. This type of brain really resists doing things that feel meaningless. Your internal reward system doesn't get triggered by just doing routine tasks or getting a pat on the back. It's triggered by working towards something that feels truly meaningful in the long run. This is exactly why you can seem lazy with the small stuff, but then incredibly driven when it comes to big, important projects. Your effort requires a real sense of purpose, not just an obligation. So, when you start to put all these pieces together, the overclocked brain, the adapted childhood, the internal validation, you start to get a really clear picture. And understanding this logic, that's the very first step toward accepting yourself for who you are.
If you take one thing away from this, let it be this. What you've always seen as your biggest flaws, the overthinking, the intense sensitivity, that feeling of being different, they're not mistakes. They're simply the price of admission for having a mind capable of incredible depth, awareness, and emotional intensity. So please remember, your brain isn't broken. It's a high-performance machine that adapted perfectly to its environment. It was literally designed for complexity, for self-reliance, and for operating on its own internal compass. You see, the real question isn't about how to fix your mind. It's about how to start working with it. Now that you can see the logic behind why you are the way you are, how does that change the way you see yourself? How does it change the way you move through the world? And that's the thought I want to leave you with.